Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's webinar, where we will talk about SAP SuccessFactors Learning and OpenSesame. Our topic is your LMS needs content to thrive. My name is Chris Fellebaum. I'm the LMS Service Manager here at Rizing HCM.
Hi there, and I'm Abby Miles. I am our Director of People at OpenSesame and excited to chat with you all today.
Likewise. Thank you, Abby. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. Everyone is muted already through the GoToWebinar tool. Please, however, ask your questions at any time through the webinar chat. We are watching the chat and question panel. We have allocated some additional time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. So if you want to ask your question verbally, you'll have a chance. Today's session is being recorded, and we will send out the links to the slides and the recording in the coming days. And of course, we value your feedback. So please fill out the survey at the end to let us know what other topics you'd like us to cover or other things that you would like to see. And then finally, we will show a demo of SuccessFactors Learning features later in the webinar, which support a library of elective content such as OpenSesame. So we'll have some visuals apart from a slideshow a little bit later. All right, over to you, Abby.
Perfect, thanks, Chris. Welcome, everybody. So I don't know if anybody can relate to this picture. Let's talk a little bit about the current state of e-learning and your training programs and what that might feel like on a day-to-day basis. So within the current state of content challenges and learning priorities, it can be hard to develop a roadmap and figure out what you're trying to do and what's most important. But you should understand kind of what the current challenges that exist within the content sector. That's the piece where OpenSesame is really here to help you with. And those are some of the challenges that I'm going to talk through to let you know kind of you're not alone with the challenges, but also how OpenSesame can help with some of that.
And of course, how SuccessFactors Learning has synergy with OpenSesame and how they can make it even better together.
100%, yeah. So Chris and I together are going to be the yin and the yang of the two pieces, the LMS and technical side and systems, and then OpenSesame on the content side of things. So current content challenges, Brandon Hall did a survey, and there was lots of interesting information in there. They've done a lot of surveys, obviously, but some of the ones that we wanted to call out regarding current content challenges is that only 35% of companies say that they have effectively defined the learning content required to satisfy each of their critical skills or competencies, which is a little concerning, but also you're not alone. If you don't feel like you've got your learning program together and you don't have the content for every skill and every competency, maybe you don't even know your competencies, that's okay. We have customers every day with these challenges. So on to the next statistic, Chris. Perfect. So 52% of people, a little more than half of all companies, say that their catalog of e-learning courses needs significant or total improvement to become easy to navigate and to work on multiple devices. So this is not only within your system, within your LMS, how do people find it? What courses are they finding? Are they able to find the courses that they need? And do the courses that they find work on all the devices that they might be accessing the courses from? On to the next stats. So here's a few content challenges. Some of the top ones that kind of bubble to the top include not enough relevant content. So 50% of people say that that's a challenge for them. Too much old content, 39%. We see this and hear about this challenge often, something that was created back in 2007 and it still lives somewhere and people are still accessing it and it's clearly out of date. Hopefully nobody still has videos that were created in the 90s and sent out on DVDs, but we know that that still happens as well. And then number 3 here, difficult to incorporate and integrate within your system. So within your LMS, how to get content into your LMS once you buy content. Those are often common challenges. And that's where Chris, towards the end of the webinar today, is going to give us a nice demo on how SuccessFactors, SAP SuccessFactors Learning allows the OpenSesame integration to really drive ROI of both your purchase of an LMS and of content, and making sure that those systems work really seamlessly together to make your lives easier. Our goal every day is to make you a hero at doing your job and making your job easy for you to function and be successful in, and that's where Rizing and OpenSesame are working together to do that for our customers. And then you can see a couple of the other. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Well put. No, I like that.
Perfect. You can see a couple other challenges here, which are common, and we hear also low quality content, no curation, difficult to search, not enough content overall. Maybe you just don't have enough and people want more. Those are common challenges. So learning priorities, top 3 learning priorities are increasing the amount of experiential or on-the-job learning, increasing the amount of informal learning, and creating smaller content objects. So these are some things that are either important or critical to the business. Some of the other priorities include revising existing content, incorporating mobile delivery, and redesigning classroom experiences and so on. So there's lots of ways that people are looking at courses and trying to prioritize what courses they're choosing and how to integrate those into their overall L&D strategy or their training programs to make sure that they're really engaging their learner population at the highest level that they can. So to talk about the pace of content creation, and I don't know, I'm sure that we have decades, if not hundreds of years of experience on this call and people listening in. I've been in the industry for about 15 years, and I can tell you that even 10 years ago, we used to give out statistics of how much money it takes to create content and how many hours. It's like 400 hours to create 1 hour of learning content, and how many hundreds of thousands of dollars people would spend to create a small amount of training or a really effective piece of training. And I can tell you that at the very high end, that is still the case. You know, when you have professional actors and voiceover talent and instructional designers and professional audio and all sorts of things can go into a really high quality e-learning course or training experience or Hollywood video or whatever that might be. But what we've seen, this phenomenon in the recent years, is the rapid pace of content creation. And as we all know, YouTube, we live in a YouTube generation, and YouTube is increasing every minute. Anybody with a smartphone, which everybody has in their pocket now, can create a video and upload it to YouTube, and it's content creation, rapid. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about YouTube. Go ahead on to the next slide, Chris, where 563 hours of YouTube content is created every minute. And I'm sure as soon as we created this slide that statistic was out of date, and it's probably speeding up every minute of every day. But as we know, if any of you recognize Grumpy Cat, not all of that content is effective or relevant or informative. There is a lot of great content out there, and YouTube is just one sample. Obviously, there's rapid development tools. Everybody has PowerPoint or Google Slides, and anybody can be a teacher. of any topic that they're interested in. You know, if you've ever seen makeup tutorials or kids opening toys on YouTube, you know that this is a reality. But we need to weed through all of that. Again, that deluge, that tsunami of content that is out there, not only on YouTube, but everywhere on the web, and where everybody can create anything that they want, and make sure that we're doing the right thing for your organization and for your training program.
Or if you're like my daughter, watching other kids play video games. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I know. There's companies and businesses out there that are doing just that. So it's interesting.
Yep.
There's something for everybody, but it doesn't always have a place in our L&D strategy. So let's talk about that.
Grumpy cat. I wanted to add that.
Oh,
she died recently.
Poor Grumpy.
Moving on.
We could talk about YouTube stars all day, I think. So solutions. So how do we deal with that? How do we get past that? How do we wade through the mess of content that's out there? And we recommend don't do it all at once. You're not going to, there's no silver bullet solution for finding and creating and selecting content within your training program. So there's a few ways that you can face these challenges, just a few that we've called out, and there's way more than this. But look at courses by provider, user, department. Start segmenting down cohorts of training within your program and within your strategy, and figure out, do some gap analysis. What are we missing? What areas are we really strong in? Where could we get the greatest return if we fill this little hole? Or, the cost benefit analysis in each of those segments, because many companies have thousands of pieces of content, and you really have to chip away at it over time and improve your program. There's never, when I talk to people about training programs, there's never an end game. There's no finish line. It's just constant improvement and making sure that you're moving in the right direction. And pieces of it might be finished and complete, but with training, it's like lifelong learning. There's no end game. You're never going to say, okay, I'm smart enough, I don't need to read another book, I don't need to learn anything new, I'm done. Your training program should be the same way. Another strategy is to survey your user population. The reality is that most learners just want to come in and get their courses done. And they want to see what is really going to be most interesting to them. What do they need to get their job done? What do they need to be most effective, to be most engaged? They don't want to go through a bunch of content that is irrelevant, or that they already know, or that they don't have time for. So they really need to understand what's in it for them and make sure that that content is speaking to them in their current position. And then I would say informal discussions, even in very large organizations. I've heard this be really successful. So ask around, what's working, what's not working, what questions are people being asked over and over and over again that could be solved with some information or knowledge transfer. What are the areas for improvement? What are the areas that are really successful? I had a customer once that we pulled up some of their dashboard reports just to see what were people using, who was really successful. And they had a few learners that bubbled up to the top of every report and were taking literally hundreds of training courses, when the average in their organization was maybe like 10 to 20 a year. They were requiring 3 to 5 courses. The average learner was 10 to 20. And then there's people taking hundreds of courses. Every piece of content out there that they were putting out there for their organization, these people were taking. And so that administrator that I was working with was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know who these people are. I don't recognize their names. I don't know where they work. And so measuring some items, but then following up with your metrics with informal discussion. So he reached out and found out who were these employees, what department do they work in? And it turned out that they were folks that worked in one area of the business, that had one manager that was supporting them and encouraging them. And so to use those opportunities to have conversations to learn what's working, what's not working. Maybe that group might probably have some really good insights into the courses that they liked and don't like, and more opportunities. Chris, did you have any other best practices?
Yeah, no, that's a great story. And I've seen similar stories. And really, I mean, your LMS is your friend here, right? Assuming that you have a relatively new model LMS that does cool stuff like SuccessFactors Learning, among others. You know, from beginning to end, an LMS can help you target training in a more intelligent way to specific audiences. So in looking at courses by things like user or department or division or location, even maybe, you know, factory floors versus boardrooms. LMSs these days offer the ability to very selectively and intelligently target assignment of training, as well as availability of catalogs and even recommendations, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later during the demo, to very specific, targeted, dynamic groups of people. You know, once you create those rule sets, there's generally very little maintenance involved. So that's working smart, right? And using the tool to its best effect. All the way to the other side in setting up and leveraging your system reports in an intelligent way to get at that kind of analytic insight that Abby mentioned around who are our champions here and how can we learn from their results.
Absolutely. Activate your champions at any point. Okay, Chris, I think we're on to your slide here.
Ooh, pretty. All right. So I call this slide the content success cycle. And, you know, I kind of cued into one thing Abby said a few slides back, in that there's rarely a finish line to all this, or an end game, so to speak. I think there can be an end game, but it's an ongoing process, and hence this success cycle around your content. And I'll talk to each of these briefly, but starting at the top, it is a really good idea to inventory on a periodic and certainly on an upfront basis. If you have kind of a stale library of, you know, tattered paperbacks and stuff that people aren't real interested in taking anymore, and you're looking at moving to a model, a robust model of elective course delivery, you know, you really want to take stock of all of your sources of training, both vendor and internally developed. You'll want to consolidate and eliminate redundancies where you can. You know, so much money is wasted across, you know, companies where different functions within the organization, you know, maybe you're not real centralized in your administration or ownership of the system. There's a lot of duplicates, and you should eliminate that wherever possible. And this kind of formal inventory exercise is a great way to do that. You want to draw in all your potential stakeholders. Who are those owners of content, or those people who have an opinion and want to have a voice on what kind of content is offered to empower their people to be more successful. And for vendor content, you know, definitely take advantage of upfront and ongoing curation services. Abby will certainly talk a little bit more about that when it comes to OpenSesame. OpenSesame is really a leader and on the vanguard in offering that type of curation service to, you know, to whittle down what might be a vast potential range of offerings to something more manageable and something more realistic to what you need. Reverse engineer. That's a good part of this inventory exercise, to define what your organizational needs are and what training is available to fulfill those needs. And then finally, I do recommend using, wherever possible, a rapid start feature such as Open Content Network, which is unique to SuccessFactors Learning, and which I'll show you later. There's not much to show because it is rapid start, it's simple. Take advantage of that where you can to more quickly and easily and, dare I say, cheaply integrate libraries of vendor content. You know, gone are the days where that has to be a painful exercise. Categorize. So moving around the circle here, you know, map out and have a vision of what is going to be elective or developmental versus what is going to be proscribed or compliance oriented. Sometimes organizations don't have a clear vision of that, particularly sort of customers who are new to the world of LMSs whom I've implemented. And I always encourage having a good vision with that. Too many customers are completely at one end or the other end of that spectrum. And there's room to be somewhere in the middle quite often. Define your distinct audiences. I was talking on the last slide about how LMSs allow you to target training to specific groups. Try to map those out. Who are those groups who are, need water with this plant metaphor on the slide, and who need training? For example, Six Sigma training may not be appropriate for everybody, but it might be a very critical need for a strategic group within the organization. One global retail customer we're working with has very special needs around customer service and IT skills. In some cases, gaps and opportunities are very clear up front. In other cases, they're not so clear and do require a little bit of analysis. Finally, in this categorization exercise, think ahead and where you can apply metadata to the content. Things like course categories, competencies. Start thinking of that early on. What kind of competency model this training might fit into. That way, you're kind of reverse engineering, and you're starting with a vision of where you want to end up. Okay, moving around, tied to TM processes. This is often overlooked when it comes to delivering training through an LMS. Many LMSs have native integrations between the LMS and other modules that specialize in performance management or goal management or career development planning. Certainly in the case of SuccessFactors, there's a robust integration between SuccessFactors Learning and those other modules. And it allows you to deliver the course catalog in the context of a goal plan or a development plan. So take advantage of those and make key content available as part of the career development and planning cycles and the goal management cycles. That really can be an incredibly effective way to help further build adoption and, in the end result, return on investment, right? Market. So moving around the circle a little more, plant and dollar sign. So take advantage of native features in the LMS. And I'm going to show you a few of these here in a couple moments when we break out of the PowerPoint here. But marketing features, machine-based and peer-based recommendation features. There's a lot of native capabilities in LMSs, particularly SuccessFactors Learning, that can help drive adoption and ROI. And again, we'll demo some of those features. And finally, go outside of the system with marketing. Build awareness of the LMS as a job benefit. I think so many customers I've worked with, at least, think LMS and they think compliance training. And you can put a lot more imagination into your learning management system and have a vision for it as a true job benefit. I've really seen sort of some big aha moments when I explain to customers that the LMS can be perceived as a huge job benefit, and a library of elective content like OpenSesame is absolutely the way to get there. Then finally, measure. So, this may seem obvious, but you run periodic adoption reports. What are people consuming? And back to what Abby was saying about gaining that valuable insight into those champions within the organization. Who is consuming more or most? If you have it at your disposal, use more advanced analytics to understand some of those trends at even a deeper level. And then finally, it's always a good idea to conduct surveys and ask your stakeholders and your internal customers where you can improve. What would they like to see more of? What is not important to them is often a valuable insight as well. All right.
That's great. So thanks, Chris. That was a great kind of strategic, big picture look at the whole cycle and that continuous iterative process. I'm going to take it down a notch to a very tactical decision when it comes course by course or need by need. What are you going to do? Are you going to curate or are you going to create? Because we hear this question all day, every day. It's what we do. So let's go ahead and go on. We've got a couple ways that I like to talk about this. So it used to be really simple. It used to be a question of which is cheaper. Is it cheaper to curate or is it cheaper to create? Whichever one's cheaper, do that. If it's cheaper to create it, then you build the content. If it's cheaper to curate it, then you buy the content. And in some cases, in simple information knowledge transfer, that's still the case. I'll even recommend to clients that if you can get something for free and it's good enough and it meets your needs, sometimes there's a YouTube video on how to fix your washing machine and that's good enough to get you by. Like I've done that before. I live in that world as well. So sometimes free is okay. Sometimes if it's cheaper to curate it and buy it from somebody off the shelf, then that's okay. And then sometimes you do need to create content, but it's getting more complicated. So the decision isn't as simple as it once was. And on to the next one. So we have to think about where to begin when we're making this decision of curate versus create. And some of the challenges that come along with that is, again, the problem of abundance, that tidal wave of resources and rapid development, and everybody is now a content creator, which just wasn't the same 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, especially. It was a very elite group that knew how to create content and had the technical ability to do so. Now everybody is a content creator. My 3-year-old child with my phone with the video is a content creator every day. So that is a constant challenge. And then balancing internal requests and needs. So if you are a one-man shop, or if you have a small team of training developers or instructional designers on your staff, you will know that the list of things that people want you to create is always longer than you will ever be able to fulfill in 1 year's time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time. So you need to be able to balance those internal requests and needs and kind of make educated decisions on when you're going to go down which path. And then also making sure that you're aligning your content with your company goals, and that the content that you're picking is in alignment and that you're focusing on your company goals strategically within your organization. And I think that's where Chris's cycle of inventorying and measuring will help you do so. And then, Chris, did you have anything that you would suggest here where to begin?
It would. Yeah, more just a comment. I've had the honor of being on the steering committee for a couple of our wonderful customers that I've implemented LMS for. And, creating content is difficult to do right. There is so much governance involved to really do it right and do it justice that I think it's worthy of much more consideration and planning and ongoing, even budgetary support than it necessarily gets. So if you're weighing creation versus curation, that would certainly play into that decision in my mind.
Definitely. So we put together this super simple decision matrix just to give you some food for thought when you're making these decisions. And it basically helps you by asking 2 questions, and then the gray quadrants in the middle let you know kind of where you fall on the spectrum of how unique is the content. So is it kind of generic? Is it your telephone skills? Is it leadership development? Is it Microsoft Excel? Is it content that is relatively generic, or is it content that is very unique? So unique to your business, to your product, to your processes, proprietary within your company. And then, so that's up on the left quadrant. And then across the bottom spectrum, what resources do you have in-house? So do you have limited resources? Do you, again, are you a one-man shop? Are you a 5-man shop for a 1,000-person, 10,000-person company? Or do you have many, many resources? Do you have unlimited money, time, people, energy, effort? I can guarantee you in 15 years, I don't think that the training and development department is ever the department that gets unlimited resources, but you might be have some luxury there if you do have a studio and an instructional designer and people creating courses all day every day. So everybody falls on both of those two spectrums, and every course and every decision that you make when it comes to a specific training, you should be able to roughly map that out. So if something super easy, let's start with easy stuff. If you have very limited resources and the content is generic, almost always you want to buy the content or curate it from a provider. And like OpenSesame, we're a best of breed content provider. We're an aggregator of content. So you can come to us and let us know, hey, I need this topic, this safety, how to use fire extinguisher safety for my Spanish speaking population. And we have that course off the shelf right now. Today, we can have it live in your training program. We've had very serious situations, active shooter training, safety training, ladder awareness, where somebody gets hurt and somebody walks into HR or L&D and we say, we need something now because we want to train people, because we want to make sure that lack of training is not the cause of another situation. In a lot of cases, you can just buy that content and be done with it right now. And you can often what you can buy is higher quality than what you might be able to develop in-house without being, a subject matter expert. Maybe you're not a safety organization, for example. As we move over on that generic line, but even if you have many resources, but the content is generic, in a lot of cases, and most of the time, it's still a better decision to buy the content. So this is, you have a massive training development group, lots of resources, but you need some pivot table training in Excel. I would say that most instructional designers do not want to create the 50th training course on that topic. There's lots of stuff. Don't recreate the wheel. It's still often a better decision to buy. So the generic content is pretty easy. As we move up to the more unique content, it becomes a decision of whether you have limited or many resources. So if you have limited resources, but the content is somewhat unique, or there's something unique about it to your organization, in those cases, we recommend that you consider co-developing it or potentially outsourcing it. So there's often times, as we think back to those challenges that we talked about in the first few slides, there's times where you can buy something off the shelf, but then customize the course. So this happens often, we see with sexual harassment training. The general training on sexual harassment is the same across all organizations. But then within your organization, what is your policy? What is your procedure? How does somebody report something? Who do they contact if there's a situation? That's where you could very cost effectively customize the unique parts of the course, but co-develop or embed it with content that's already been created. You don't need to start from ground zero. You can start with something that's created and then zhuzh it up a little bit to be unique to your business. In the upper right-hand quadrant is if the content is very unique and you have many resources. This is an easy decision. I would say this is the top 5 to 10% of your content. What is proprietary? Your business, your product, your people. That's what you want to be focusing your efforts and energy and money on developing in-house, especially if you have many resources. That's a great opportunity to make sure that you're putting all of those resources to the highest value content. So I know it's not as easy as like answer 2 questions and make a decision, but hopefully this gives you some food for thought when you're talking to somebody, or when somebody knocks on your door, you get an email that, hey, I need a course on X, Y, or Z. next month, tomorrow, yesterday, to have that conversation or to think through that decision versus just doing what's urgent or what's important at the moment. Great.
Okay.
On
Zhuzh it
to
up. I like that.
zhuzh it up. Yeah. And I want to make sure that I give Chris plenty of time to demo the cool SAP SuccessFactors Learning stuff. So I'm going to talk through this one really quickly. But this is just this concept of the learning content pyramid was actually developed by our friend Donald Taylor from the Learning and Performance Institute. And the concept here is within, again, that tidal wave of material and content that exists out there in this world, that at the bottom is our freely available content. There is a ton of it. There's a ton of volume, but the contextual relevance is likely very low. This is YouTube and Grumpy Cat and all of the content that used to live on VHS tapes in somebody's training development room that's still out there in the ether. As you move up the pyramid, the contextual relevance becomes more and more relevant to your business, but the volume becomes lower. So off-the-shelf content libraries, just buy it, give me whatever you've got. Yes, I'll take the 500 courses, whether they're relevant to my business or not, and I'll take it and consume it as it exists, is off-the-shelf content libraries. User-generated might be people within your business or within your industry that are generating. They'll be more contextually relevant, but there's less of them. Curated content sets, we're right in the middle of the triangle there. That's where OpenSesame falls, and that's where we really consider kind of our specialty zone. We have a large content library, but then we work with our customers to curate within that. What are your needs? What are your competencies? What are you training on? What's your learning culture? What's your style? So we work with our customers to curate content specifically to them. We like to think of ourselves as like the personal shoppers of your e-learning training program. So that's where that's kind of our sweet spot, is that curated content set. It's going to be relevant in the courses that we select, but they're not built specifically to your business. But there's still a good amount of volume to cover, I'd say 90% of the needs of most training programs. And then as we from the top, internally created. So what have you built within your own organization? And then at the very top of the pyramid is the externally commissioned. So you hired it out, you did kind of the cream of the crop training development experience, paid somebody to create content that's super relevant to your company, probably quite expensive, so there's probably not a lot of them. And I like to say, if you're going to do those things, make sure that they are really the evergreen content that is super specific and unique to you, so that you're putting your money where it really is going to make the biggest impact. So that's something to think about. That content pyramid, again, gives you context for when we start breaking down what is all that content and where does it live, a framework for thinking of that. That's it.
I would just point out, from an LMS standpoint, from a technical standpoint, the lower you get in contextual relevance, or the closer to the bottom of this pyramid, the more sketchy it can be in terms of operability with your learning management system. So things tend to get a little more predictable as you go up the pyramid.
Absolutely, yeah. And then one last thing that I just want to touch on, I've actually written a white paper and done a few webinars on this topic, so I can speak hours alone on this piece, is that there is the technical LMS. How are we going to set things up? How are we going to organize things? Picking courses, creating courses, getting them loaded. But that is really just like the first hurdle. It's like you're climbing a mountain and you get to the top just to see that the next mountain is an even bigger mountain. So think about that and be aware of that once you get your program set up and in place, that the next kind of piece that you're going to have to work on is engagement and utilization. And I think of this as taking off your strategy hat, taking off your e-learning hat, and now you're putting on your marketing hat. And how are you going to engage your learners? And how are you going to increase utilization and maintain utilization and keep people coming back for more and keeping them hungry? So we've got just some high-level tips here about making your content relevant to your people, making sure you're communicating early and often and throughout. about your program so people know what's happening. Don't expect that you're going to tell them once and that they're just going to come back and be there and taking courses all the time. That's just not the reality of busy adult professionals. And then incentivizing training. So I always think about kind of the bell curve of training is there's people at the bottom end that are never going to take training no matter how hard you push them. There's people at the top end of the bell curve that will take every training. You know, those people that took hundreds of courses, they're going to do it of their own volition. And then there's the large bell in the middle of people that just need a little extra incentivization and motivation to take the training. And that's that can be financially motivating. That can be like 13 here, activating pride, you know, give people completion certificates that they can hang on their cubicle wall so that they can show people that they're proud of what they're doing, or badges, or use your LMS to do some of these things, promote the people that are doing well. So lots of tips here. These are super high level that you can, hopefully you can glean something from. This is not all inclusive by any means, but I think we'll also share a link to our white paper on this topic specifically, because I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of customers over the years, and I know that this is kind of a future challenge.
Good stuff. All right. So the next few slides really give some visuals specific to SuccessFactors Learning, in support of some of the topics I've been foreshadowing, right? With how easy it is to integrate OpenSesame as a library of content, some tools that you can use to deliver more ROI and really get some awareness and some utilization of your catalog. Really, these are takeaways for you guys after the fact. We'll give you some live visual on these in my demo instance. So with that said, you know, this slide, and I'm not going to spend long on this, but it's special to me because we've had a relationship with OpenSesame for going on several years now here at Rizing HCM. And it illustrates the equation for success that kind of comes at that intersection of the product, which is SuccessFactors Learning that we implement, OpenSesame, who is our vendor of choice for content and our partner in that, and Rizing HCM, who is, you know, unparalleled with implementation expertise and consulting services. I sound like I'm in sales, I assure you of that. But this is a really special synergy that truly is bigger, you know, the whole is truly greater than the sum of the parts in this case. So, you know, not only does SuccessFactors Learning provide a great feature set, and again, we'll look at some of those things, but it, you know, allows delivery of a great catalog of training in OpenSesame. And Rizing HCM also offers some complementary services to kind of enhance and extend your investment in both SuccessFactors Learning and OpenSesame. There are other things that we can do to kind of make it even more beautiful thing. Anything to add, Abby?
Just to echo that, I also am not in sales. I formerly was heading up our customer success department, and there is a magical synergy that happens when you have the platform and the system with the SAP SuccessFactors Learning and a great content solution, and then the support of the implementation and the services to help our customers. We've seen just that is like the magic sweet spot of having all three of those parts to make a system and a program whole. And we've seen some really great successes for our customers that are using those kind of three legs of the stool. So great.
Thank you. All right. So let's get into, and this is going to be a very brief demo. By necessity, we're headed toward the top of the hour, but also as planned. And that's really because the integration with OpenSesame that is out of box in SuccessFactors Learning is incredibly simple. And I assure you that is nothing but a good thing. The setup for it is easy. Really, it just involves a simple configuration, plugging in some values that OpenSesame provides. It is, you know, it's an API-based integration, but you don't need to have, you know, an integrations or IT hat in order to make it work. We've even had some customers set this integration up themselves. It's not, at the risk of harming our own business, that is doable. We're happy to do it for you, of course. And again, we offer other complementary services to extend that. But it really is plug and play. So once the integration's set up, you'll have this option for content network in your learning area of SuccessFactors Learning Administration. And you will have OpenSesame as a content provider. It's worth mentioning there are other vendors who integrate with SuccessFactors Learning, including some free ones who might be a little more toward the bottom of that pyramid that we showed, things like Udacity or Coursera, sort of online universities that offer free content. And that could certainly be complementary in some cases. I'm just going to do an open search though, and this will display all of the courses that are available from OpenSesame via the integration that I've set up and via the contract that we have with OpenSesame as a customer. As you can see, there are over 6,000 titles. That number could vary depending on what specific offering with OpenSesame you opt to go with. But key here is I can see at a glance what is already imported into my LMS and what is not imported. Right here, if there's not a checkbox in the import column, it kind of tells me it's already been imported. But I'm not seeing courses necessarily that already exist in the LMS on this screen. I'm seeing what is available to me. And that's the beauty of it, because I can search out a title by a combination of metadata. Let's say I'm interested in Photoshop CS5. Literally with a single click and a click on the Import Selected button, I have imported that course into SuccessFactors Learning. It is appearing alongside all my other courses or items as an available course. And at this point, I can do anything I want with it from an administrative standpoint, just like an internal course that I may have developed and put in there. I can put it in a catalog and make it available to one or more end users. I can put it into a curriculum or a program, sort of a skill building program or a stepping up to management program, something like that, and assign it based on job criteria. So it becomes a course I can handle and treat just like any other at that point, and all based on a single click, which is really pretty awesome. In contrast, if you've ever struggled, I sound like an infomercial here, if you've ever struggled with content that doesn't integrate well, no, truly, thinking back several years, I have some horror stories I can remember with some vendors who just were not real friendly or plug and play as OpenSesame is. We're getting that content into the system and getting it working is truly a hurdle, right? So if you hear the excitement in my voice, that's based on comparing this to past experience. I'm going to jump over to the learner side of things here for the remainder of this short demo. Again, just to show you a few features that can help deliver ROI on this library. So you saw, I have 6,000 plus courses available on the administrative side of things. And as wonderful and relevant and fresh as the OpenSesame content is, that can be like not being able to see the forest for the trees. It is such a wealth of content that it can actually be tough sometimes to get the adoption you would expect to get. It's a lot to search through. So this really kind of pairs with the upfront curation that OpenSesame might perform to kind of narrow down and filter down those available course titles to what is relevant to your organization. But on the other side, some of these features can really help market and build awareness of these courses. Up front would be the catalog. If you set up the catalog, obviously this example is SuccessFactors Learning, but if you set it up intelligently, you can make it even more searchable than just by keyword. Obviously you're always going to have people who prefer a keyword search, and that's fine. That's kind of the Google experience, has trained us in that. But You can also set up, a robust hierarchy of topics or subject areas or course categories where somebody can drill down into business skills and just see courses that are relevant to communication skills, for example. That metadata can either be available from OpenSesame or it can be customized to an existing topical hierarchy that you have, perhaps. I mentioned competencies. That's another way to attach metadata and to organize and make courseware searchable. Maybe from the career development and planning side, when I'm building my development plan, and I want to find just those courses that help me close a competency gap in improving, nonverbal communication. That's kind of a weird example, but I'll go with it. If you attach that competency to one or more courses in the system, then they become searchable by that competency, and it really extends the relevance and the ability to target what you're looking for in the catalog out of what might be a ton of courses. Recommendations is kind of the second area that I love it. I think this is a fantastic feature that is really pretty unique to SuccessFactors Learning. Real quickly, there are 3 types of recommendations. There are rule-based, so literally you can set up rules based on your HR data to say if you're in the headquarters location and your job title is project manager, then I want to recommend these 5 courses to you. Very targeted, great way to market stuff. Peer-to-peer recommendations. I took this course. I remember my buddy down the hall said he wants to learn to do pivot tables. I'm going to recommend this to him. My friend here recommended developing leadership style to me and left a personal message. And then finally, on the newer side of things, it's a new feature, is machine learning-based recommendations, which SuccessFactors Learning has recently released. And that's kind of like when Amazon guesses what you probably want to buy, and they're frighteningly correct. It takes a lot of things into account to make those recommendations. So I'm going to cut this a little bit short. I want to leave time for questions, but there are even more features within the system to help really make things accessible to your learners and to, again, deliver on your investment in this catalog and to really sell it as a job benefit. All right, so moving over. Do we have any questions? Hopefully those of you with audio issues were able to work those out.
Yeah, it sounds like there was only 1 or 2 early on that hopefully got worked out. I don't see anything kind of queued up. If anybody has any questions, feel free. You can type it in either the questions panel or the chat panel. Either one, we're keeping an eye on both of them. And we will give you a minute.
I'll put a question in that I hear quite a bit. Oh, we do. Can you open a course in the demo? Sure. I will be glad to do that. While I'm doing that, a common question I get is, how is the library maintained? And what if new titles are released by OpenSesame or titles are retired? And the answer is that there's a process that runs on a scheduled basis, could be daily if you want, that refreshes your catalog. And you notice you can filter by not imported. That will show you any new titles that have appeared and that OpenSesame has made available literally on a daily basis if you choose to do that. Let's see, I will look at developing leadership style. Titles do not come across, another question, do titles come across in curricula or programs? They do not. Those are kind of a manual effort. Rizing could certainly work with you to predefine at least the curricula that you envision and to use something like the curriculum connector to put, to assemble those courses with a lot less manual administration.
And to add to that, sorry, Chris, while you're, good question, Olivia, if you are using OpenSesame, we do, with our customer success, every customer has a customer success manager. A lot of the publishers do have curricula that they're intending, or bundles of courses, or courses that are intended to be taken in a specific order. So we can give you a lot of information and kind of intended use of courses. A lot of them can be broken out and used one-off, kind of a la carte, and a lot of them can be used in series. So technically, they don't come across via the integration into SAP SuccessFactors Learning in the existing program, but like Chris said, Rizing can help you do that, or to do it in bulk, but we can give you kind of the structure and organization for how they're intended to be used.
And Murphy's Law, the course that I went to open is one that a title that has been retired, and I have not run that daily process in a while, mainly because this is my demo instance. It's not really a live instance, so don't let that influence your impression. I think, though, contacting OpenSesame would be the way to go. They would be more than happy, or Rizing, to give you a demo and even make some content available to you.
Absolutely. A couple other questions that I'm seeing come in, Chris. Well, let me answer the easy ones. Can we get a copy of the slides? Absolutely, and I think Chris will cover that here in a minute. We will be sending out all the slides. Another question: is there an easy way in the LMS to charge learners upfront for access to courses?
Absolutely. SuccessFactors Learning does have a full e-commerce or commerce capability that you could employ in connection with OpenSesame. I think, though, at a simpler level, OpenSesame offers various structures for licensing that might make that a little easier to manage sort of on the back end. That would be my initial impression there.
Perfect. I have a couple of folks asking for contact, and Maria, I'll reply to you here quickly. We will have someone from our team follow up with you. And then another question: my company currently uses internally created content, which is very limiting. And it can be, it's challenging, and you only have so many time and hours and resources in the day. So we're happy to help explore and talk about that, and how OpenSesame can support your existing program and supplement what you're doing internally. We never expect to be kind of a catch-all for everything. So I know we're at the top of the hour. I'm happy to sit on and answer a few more questions. I know Chris had a couple of announcements before I'm sure people are having to jump off for their next meetings. But Chris, did you have some kind of closing items?
Yeah, real quick, just circling back to the housekeeping. We will be sending out a link to the recording as well as the slides. Our contact information is in the slides. Absolutely feel free to reach out. You can tell we have a passion for this, and we've set a lot of customers up for success with that relationship that we have.
Definitely. No, it's been great. Thank you all for joining and listening in and holding on for the whole hour. I appreciate it. Our intent was to give you a few minutes back, but again, yes, Chris and I could talk for hours about this. So
Action-packed. Yeah.
Yeah, we have.
I agree.
And I don't see any other pending questions. If we've missed anything, we will go through all questions after the webinar and follow up with folks directly.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And thank you, Abby.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
All right.
If it doesn't work, it's